I think this whole industry is just one great big game. If you're not playing the game, you're being played.
Today on the Copy That podcast, I am thrilled to welcome the copy alchemist herself, Pauline Longdon. Pauline has crammed a lot of copywriting experience into the last 14 years. She has leveraged her life experiences and turned that into emotionally powerful communication that creates marketing masterpieces that resonate deeply with audiences and prospects.
So make up 85% of the buying decisions in the world are very emotional beings. You can't master someone else's emotions when you haven't even mastered yours.
At this point in her career, she is a mentor for the AWAI Circle of Success program. She is an international speaker, and she is a best-selling author. Pauline's story is a testament to the power of resilience, strategic learning, and the pursuit of excellence in the craft of copywriting.
I was discharged from the army. It wasn't my choice. They said that I'd never nurse again. Basically took everything, every little skerrick of hope. When I was driving home that day, I'd picked out a tree and I was going to drive into it. I stopped the car with just like millimeters to spare. So then I just like saw a vision of myself 20 years into the future. And then like whatever decisions I made now influenced her quality of life.
Prepare to be inspired by Pauline, a copywriter who truly embodies the spirit of turning adversity into advantage and passion into professional triumph. Hello, everybody, hello. Welcome to another of the Copy That podcast series where I go to some state and then interview professional copywriters and marketers working at the absolute top of this particular game. For today's conversation, I traveled all the way to my house where I have the one and only Pauline Longdon.
Hey, Sean, thanks for having me at your house.
Thank you very much for joining. With these conversations, I like them to be fairly casual. We're trying to tease out, what information you have that would be beneficial to people that are really eager and excited to get into this weird world we call copywriting. And there's a proliferation of interest right now in it because it's a way to make money remotely. And that's something that I know that you are doing. In fact, you're quite possibly making money as remotely as a human possibly could.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a profession, career with a lot of potential, as long as you do it right, though. And I do see a lot of people doing it wrong, or they buy into other people's dreams, and they don't actually find out what their dreams are, what their goals are actually for their own career.
You are currently working in Australia, and you have worked with some of basically a who's who of the copywriting A-list world.
Yep.
Would you mind sharing a little bit about whom you've worked with in the past, as well as what got you into copywriting? Because you have an incredible story.
Yeah, well, I think I'd like to start with why I got into copywriting and at the first place, and then like we move through to all the people that I've worked with and, being trained by, because it is quite a good list. And it's kind of surprising for someone who lives in Australia to have been trained by the people that I have been and worked with people that I have worked with. It's like, how in the hell did she do it? So I'd like to share that today. So the reason I got into copywriting is that I had a woo-woo business. I got out of the army back in 2005, and that wasn't voluntarily. I ended up with major depression after being deployed for basically a whole year, back-to-back operations, and it really burnt me out. I got out of the army and was wandering around for a while. I knew that I didn't want to be a nurse anymore. It's a pretty hard way to make a living. And I think that I ran out of empathy, like my empathy gland was very depleted at that stage of my life. So I started to look around for different things, and I found a healing modality that I liked and helped me get out of depression, and then basically ended up having this really good business, but it's like, it's not a good business if no one knows about it. It's not that field of dreams thing that if you build it, people come. I found out that they don't. So then I had to learn about marketing. So I became a marketer first, and then I hired a copywriter to write some copy for me, and the copy sucked. And so I asked the marketing company, I said, can you have this rewritten? And they went, no, but if you think you can do better, then do better. I said, I can't do any worse. And so then I just learned copywriting, and then people started to notice that I had an ability to write, and they asked who was writing my copy. I said that was actually me, and they were quite surprised, and then people just started to offer me money to write for them, and I went, wow, this is not a bad way to make money. It's almost magical. You get to sit all by yourself all day just in your own little world, having like a conversation with yourself, and you get paid for it.
You can make money as a copywriter?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. Well, I mean, not everyone makes money as a copywriter, because I mean, there's a lot that happens, and what I notice a lot in the industry is that there's these two camps. It's like the copywriter and the offer owner, and I keep saying to all the copywriters that I get to influence, so these guys that we're talking to today, is like, you are an offer owner. You offer a service to someone who has a product or a service. You're both offer owners coming together to create magic. It's not, like this hierarchy that the offer owner is up on a pedestal and, you're like, please, sir, can I have some more? It's like, no, don't do that. So it's actually when you respect yourself and respect your skills and what you bring to the table, yes, you can make money.
I've definitely noticed that the best relationships that I've seen copywriters have with clients is when they start to perceive themselves as a vendor. A vendor who's responsible for delivering a certain, product of a certain level of quality at a certain, within a certain frame of time.
Yep.
And that copywriters who start seeing themselves, not as, please, sir, may I have a job, but rather as like, I'm a business owner and I am here to provide a product and service for other businesses.
Yep.
People tend to have a much better time with it.
Yeah, and I mean, when you do that, you respect yourself, so then people around you respect you as well. I think that's one of the key bits, is if you don't believe in yourself and your abilities, then no one else will.
I think that's absolutely true. So one thing that I'd love to ask then is, you segued from a military life into writing copy. And if it's one thing that I know about copywriters is that there is I don't want to say the word fetishization, but a certain love for the military and for the tropes and trappings of military life. What do you find is similar between military life and copywriting?
There are some parallels, but there's nice differences as well. But there are skills that I had in the military that then allow me to probably excel as a copywriter, and that is a self-discipline and your accountability, being a professional. I was an officer, so the funny thing was that I was often the same age as my soldiers, and while they're out, getting drunk and doing stupid things, they'd do something and they wouldn't get into trouble. I'd do the same thing and I'd get into heaps of trouble. So I grew up fast, and one of the things that we said in the army is that there's a time and a place for everything. And often the next bit was, this is not the time, this is not the place. So that actually gives you more self-accountability. And so like when you're out prospecting, as a freelancer, you are the person who's promoting yourself. I've seen a lot of the young bucks in copywriting, they go out, have drinks with, let's call them business owners. I'm not going to call them offer owners, because I just said that we're all offer owners. They'll go out with other business owners that are looking for copywriters, and they'll get on the piss with them. They'll get drunk with them, and then wonder why these guys won't ever, employ them or use them as a copywriter. And it's because they've been too familiar, or they might have said something under the influence of alcohol. And when I was an officer, I saw it all the time, like these young officers would get like a bit pissy, drinking alcohol, go and chest poke their boss. Then the next morning they're on the mat, not understanding what they'd done. And it's like, no, there's a time and a place for everything, and you don't go up to someone and just like annoy them or attempt to physically harm them if you want to work with them in the future. So I think there's like a hierarchy and there's a structure within the military that I also see in copywriting, but I think that a lot of other people don't see that either. Like, I know that there's some people who say, I just started copywriting, you'll know better than me, Pauline. And I go, well, it's not a matter of me being better than anyone. It's I'm as good as I need to be, and I'll keep getting better, but I'm not doing the stupid things that other people are doing as well. I totally respect that, where people are in their journey, and I'm just try to be as respectful of others as I can be. And that's not to say that I'm sucking up to them all the time either. I'm just going to say it. I think this whole industry is just one great big game. If you're not playing the game, you're being played. I've heard so many people going, "Oh, I don't play the game." It's like, no, well then you're being played. It's just having that awareness, and that's a parallel with the military as well. You know, if you want to be promoted, you want to be seen by the right people, then you make the maneuvers to do that, which is what I've done in copywriting as well. You know, that kind of segues into how did I meet like Clayton Makepeace, Gary Bensavenga, Paris Lampropoulos, you know, all of the guys that people go, my God, I've always wanted to meet those guys. It's like, I got off my ass. They weren't coming to Australia. So I had to go to the mountain instead of waiting for the mountain to come to me. And then people say, well, you're lucky. And I go, tell me where in my history I was actually lucky. Because I think that a lot of the time you make your own luck by taking or making opportunities.
Everybody who started this and is sort of waiting for that moment where, like, okay, I've put in my dues. Like, when is this thing going to happen to me? But one thing that I know about you is that you have hustled. You know, you flew all the way to America with your partner for a compliance event.
Yep. I know.
You know, and so like the fact that you're able to, you know, not only get good work and do good work, but also parlay that into constantly investing in yourself, you know, that's something that just a lot of copywriters don't do.
Yeah, well, thank you for that. I mean, it is one of the things that's helped me in getting ahead is, you know, as I said, going to the mountain, but, you know, there are other people that were invited to this. There are, you know, you and I, you know, we met for real last year at the Copy Legends event that Todd Brown put on. Now, I saw how many people were actually invited to that. And then when you and I sat in that room, you know, there was about 20 of us out of the original, like, 34, 35 that were invited. Mm-hmm. That meant that, like, 14 people didn't decide that it was important enough for them to go to. The thing is that you'd have to invest in yourself. And I see so many copywriters, you know, maybe they're only like a county or a state away. And it's like, why won't you come to these things? You know, knowing about compliance is going to put you in a different percentage of copywriters that can write compliant copy. Like, why wouldn't you want to do that?
I know the people that are speaking at that event, and you are going to learn a lot, but also you are going to have to, you know, take some caffeine or amphetamine beforehand too, because compliance is the one thing that puts every copywriter I know to sleep. I
agree. It is a very boring topic, and also at the same time, it is one of the most important topics at the moment because the FTC is on the warpath. And so as a copywriter, you know, it's not good enough for the client just to say, yep, okay, these claims are great, because we had a saying in the army that shit rolls downhill, and guess who's down the bottom of that hill? It's going to be the copywriter. And I prefer to keep my Teflon coating, that is, no shit sticks on me, because I'm just going to be writing as compliantly as I can. And it's not going to be exciting copy, let's just be honest, but it's going to be the safer copy for people to have. And it won't be, you know, John died yet again, you know, kind of copy. It's going to be the, you know, John did something different, but at least no one's going to have like $1 million lawsuits against them.
Yeah, that's the balancing act. We're going to establish an open loop and leave more compliance talk for the end of this.
For sure.
So that we don't have a precipitous drop-off in interest at the very beginning of this. What I wanted to talk to you about was emotional writing, and you actually market yourself as the emotional copywriter. Not a, but the.
Yeah.
And if it's one criticism that I have of most newbie copy, it's that it lacks emotionality.
Yeah.
There's just no emotion to be had there. Mm-hmm. And so I was wondering if you wouldn't mind talking about what you perceive emotional copywriting to be, and then we can dig a little bit deeper into, you know, why somebody should pay attention to that and also how to do it.
Yeah. Well, really emotional copywriting is just tapping into real emotions, not like, I don't know, some of them are really quite fabricated emotions. Like, you know, you've got your Dan Kennedys, and some of them will say, you know, there's only 5 emotions that you need, you know, fear, love, guilt. I can't remember the other 2, but whatever. See, that's how well I pay attention to that. Greed. But anyway, those ones. So what I see as copywriters, it's almost like they're just going through the motions of making sure that they've got that in there. I go beyond those like emotions to the realness of things. And it's like I've written for like, sophisticated investors and people like that. And then like when I was strategizing how to write that copy, people would say, oh, don't forget you've got to tap into greed. I go, do you think sophisticated investors and like multimillionaires and billionaires actually think that they're greedy? Or is it they never call themselves greedy? It's actually other people that don't have money call them greedy. So I'm not going to tap into greed because it doesn't even exist at that level. So it's getting into the real emotions of people, not just like something that you think, oh, I'm just going to tick that off a list and off a checklist, and yep, I've touched into those emotions. And with a lot of copywriters as well, they always go for like the shame and the humiliation, like those nightmare stories.
The agitation.
Yeah, and it's like, okay, so there's a lot of things out there that people just will not talk about.
If we're going to sell the idea of emotional writing to a copywriter who is reluctant to learn everything, after all, they are copywriters, not copy readers.
Yeah.
They're here to show up and produce. They aren't here to learn. So let's sell them for a moment on emotional writing. What do you think is the biggest reason why a new copywriter should really focus on understanding and empathy and really trying to tap into emotionality?
If someone knows or feels that you know the answer to their problem, then they will want to buy that solution from you because they just feel like a kinship with you. So that's why they should do it. Another reason is, and this is going to sound sexist, but whatever. So women make up 85% of the buying decisions in the world, and they actually influence the other 15%. So we've got it covered. Women are very emotional beings. So if you're writing to the wrong emotion, or if you're just doing that very like masculine challenge copy that we're all taught how to write, that doesn't appeal to women. In fact, that will repel women. And so that's why I would say to start to either learn it or just get in touch with your own emotions. And that's another reason I don't think a lot of copywriters actually get into the emotionality of copy, is because you can't master someone else's emotions when you haven't even mastered yours.
Now that is a rabbit hole that I want to go down a little bit, because what you just said reminded me of something that Chris Haddad said during the meeting that we were at.
Yeah.
And what he said was, I don't understand all these people who are having trouble with and talking about tapping into emotions and doing voice of customer research and stuff like that. Like, if there's a 40-year-old desperate mom out there, I just look for the 40-year-old desperate mom in me, and I talk to her.
Yep.
And so I was wondering if you have a similar experience, or if you could possibly relate something that would allow somebody to like get more in touch with their emotions so they can start actually putting that onto the page and writing more powerful copy.
Yep. To get in touch with that, 40-year-old, woman within you, if you're a man like that Chris does, it's like you have to see beyond like the surface level emotion, which is what I was talking about before. So I gave the example when I was a nurse, and I'll do it shorter this time. But so there's a woman that every time I walked into her room, anyone walked into her room, she'd like throw shit at them. Now you think that as an older woman, and like they thought she had dementia, she didn't. She was very lucid, had full faculty of her brain. Yet every time someone walked into a room, she threw shit. Now, looking at that at a surface level, that is like deplorable, disgusting. What the fuck would have made someone like get to that level of throwing shit, grown woman throwing shit at people?
Sounds like a Tuesday to me, actually.
Yeah, exactly. Most people will stop at this level and go, what the fuck have I done wrong? Why is she throwing shit at me? Like personalizing it. So then you can't get in touch with any kind of emotion or empathy when you're thinking it's all about you. What I did at the time, and I was only like 20-year-old, so it was pretty like profound that I even thought about this back then. But I looked at her whole situation, the wholeness of what was going on. This woman was a successful woman. She was a teacher, did all this amazing stuff in her life. Husband dies. Her life starts to go downhill. Kids want to sell a house, put her in a home. So now she's in a nursing home. She doesn't need to be in a nursing home, but out of the kids' convenience. So she's there. She gets to eat when someone wants to feed her, or like, drop off a tray of shit to her room. She gets up in the morning when the nurses go in to change her linen. She's doing everything to someone else's schedule. So I look at her and I go, okay, so what other thing could she do? She throws her pillows, then she's uncomfortable. She throws something else. She hasn't got much. All of her belongings are gone. What's the last thing that you could do that's going to really disgust people and get your point across? Throw your own shit. So that's what she did. That's what I'm saying. Like, if you go to the surface level, that's deplorable. Why would someone do that? Next level, it's all about me. She must hate me. No, it's all about her. It's all about, like, how disempowered she felt. What could she do to get people's attention and let people know that she was not happy with the situation? So that's what I'm saying. Go beyond, like, I call that, like, people read the lines at the top level, then they read between the lines, which is usually your own interpretation of what you think is happening. It's got nothing to do with you. Read behind the lines. What's the behavior? And that's when you really touch into the deepest emotions of, their fears, doubts, disbeliefs about life.
I'm reminded of a Dan Kennedy seminar from many decades ago, 3 at this point, I think,
Wow.
where he talks about the difference between like benefits and deeper benefits.
Mm-hmm.
And he was talking about hearing aids. And I love this anecdote. I whip out this anecdote all the time. And he's talking about how, like, the way hearing aids were originally being sold, it was like, oh, you can finally hear the birds again. And he was like, no old person wants to hear the birds. Mm-hmm. And so he started interviewing people and asking them, like, what are you actually afraid of? Like, what are you concerned about? And what he started to find was that, especially for elderly people who were starting to lose their hearing, the signs of hearing loss were almost indistinguishable from dementia. Mm. And so a lot of the people that were starting to lose their hearing, old Grandpa Chuck always says the craziest things at the dinner table. He's not saying crazy stuff. He can't hear the conversation very well.
Yep.
And so really, like, what's going on is that people, the emotion that drives the sale and purchase of a very expensive hearing aid, mm-hmm. It's fear of being put away in a home. And it's like, once you start tapping into stuff like that, like, holy crap, you can write some amazing copy.
Yep.
Because then you're actually talking about what people actually care about, mm-hmm. what's in their deepest hearts of hearts.
Yeah. I mean, that reminds me of what Ted Nicholas used to say. You write from your heart to their heart, and you will not ever miss a sale. Like, that is the most purest conversation you can ever have with someone. And he used to say that he would cry when he was writing his copy, because he just was such a sensitive guy that was in touch with his emotions. He's one of the guys that I did learn from, that I learned so much from, not being afraid of that side of yourself.
We were actually just talking about Salman Rushdie, the author of the Satanic Verses. I remember reading about how he was writing a passage of one of his books, Shalimar the Clown, and he describes just weeping as he's writing this. And, it takes a rare writer. It's a very invested writer who's able to have that sort of visceral, emotional reaction to what they're saying. Mm. So, I mean, what are some tips that you would give to people if they want to start writing more emotionally, or including more emotionality in their writing?
Well, I think the biggest one has to be, like, get in touch with your own emotions. Stop filtering and stop censoring yourself. Don't think that, like, you have to be a particular character or whatever to do this job. I did notice at that event that we were at, that there was a spectrum. There was, like, the Chris Haddad, very emotional, all the way through to the other end of the spectrum, very intellectual. Mm-hmm. And then there was a couple of us that were kind of grouped in the middle that could write the intellectual and the emotional together. Like, we get the data, we get all the stuff, and then we just bring it together and do that emotional magic to it. So I wouldn't say that you have to be one or the other. Mm-hmm. And I think that has to be the top of the listicle, is that just be yourself. If you're emotional and if you're full of empathy, that's great. But if you're not, then that's great. Just learn how to or not learn, but discover, explore where your superpowers are. I see so many people try to be Chris Haddad, and I've critiqued a heck of a lot of copy with the punch to the gut story. And I even said this to Chris. I said, I've worked out how you do this punch to the guts where other people miss. I said, they do this like punch in the guts and they really wind and hurt someone. I said, but what I've noticed is as you're writing a copy, you've got your hand on their back, you're patting their back while you're punching them in the guts at the same time. You go, this is for your own good. Whereas what most copywriters miss is this hand on the back of support while you're punching them. It's almost like that tough love. Other copywriters think it's almost like a license to be savage.
Yeah.
To savage someone in their pain. So what I would say is just like find that place on the spectrum that you feel comfortable. Then I'd to say like to start to read copy, like read Chris Haddad and read some other copy and even read like emotional stories, like articles. I read so many articles every day. I just like go down these rabbit holes and see how other, like writers write about emotion. I know that you said about copywriters write and they don't read. It's like, but sometimes we just need to read so that we can get these like little, I call it copy DNA. Everyone that I've learned from, like Clayton and Ben Savenga and Paris and just all of them, I've walked away with like, I collect the best of them into what I call copy chromosomes, and then I implant them into my copy DNA, where I just consolidate them, and then it's just like everything that's within me. So it's like the more reading that you do, the more exploration of like find someone that you want to write like. And that's why I followed Paris and didn't beg him to be like mentored by him, but I basically just was a welcome pest there for a while. Why? Because I loved the way he wrote. I wanted to be like mentored by one of three people. It was Pauline Anglade-Cole, Clayton Makepeace, or Paris. Pauline wasn't doing what she's doing these days. Back then, Clayton Makepeace, I needed a visa. I couldn't get the visa. And Paris, I didn't have to come and live in America to do it. All I had to do was get up at 3 o'clock every Saturday morning for like 6.5 years to be trained by him. So I found the person I wanted to emulate and that their copy really resonated with me. So find someone who you want to write like and learn from them if at all possible.
There's definitely going to be times where you're more in touch with your emotions and more in touch with the emotion you need to be communicating in copy than others. And what I've discovered is that much like every other type of writing, emotions come through via certain codes, and that you can learn how to code your language to be emotional. It's just a matter of like really, really understanding and doing a lot of deep reading. And one of the things that I know a lot of copywriters don't do is deep reading. They read the latest, they read the collection of the Robert Collier letters and they're just scanning to like get information. They're not dissecting things on a sentence by sentence or clause by clause basis and be like, okay, what is this saying? How is this saying it? What is it communicating? How is it conferring not only the information, but also the subtext that's behind that information, which is even more important than the information itself, because, your copy needs to be almost like a portal to what the prospect, what the customer is looking for from the products that they're seeking to buy. And one of the things that I've found is that you can certainly not only look to copy, but also fiction, poetry, nonfiction. And you can look and try to understand like, okay, this is communicating an emotion. How is it doing that? What's being encoded into this language? Because once you can start to decipher that and crack that code, then you can start like actually deploying it in your own copy.
Yep.
But it takes more effort, it takes more work than simply reading something passively. And a lot of people aren't willing to really do that, I've found.
I found it too. Yeah. And I mean that's the thing. There's a lot of different, you choose your own adventure in this career. Is it just going to be a job? Is it just going to be something that you're going to do for a couple of years? A lot of people say you don't have to be particularly good to get good money in this industry. I would agree, but I think there's like a life expectancy on that as well. You know, like if you want to do that, then probably your career is going to be about like maybe 2, 3, 5 years max. You know, I'm not sure how long you've been in, but I've been in for about 12 years now.
10.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that longevity doesn't happen by accident. It comes from constantly like building your skills and diving deeper and deeper and deeper, getting into the nuts and bolts. I mean, learning from people like Clayton and Paris Lampropoulos and that. I mean, you point to anything on a page and you say to Paris, why did you do that? And he goes, oh, yeah, well, I put that period there because blah, 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 blah. You know, he'll explain why.
Yeah.
But you see so many like copywriters and, you know, I'm almost known as like the ellipses hater, but I actually don't hate them. I think it's a flavouring that you put in copy, not the main course. But it's like you point to someone else's copy and say, why did you do like 16 ellipses in a row? Yeah, it's just the vibe of it, you know. I thought it was something, you know, kind of paste the copy really well. But it doesn't. But, you know, they don't have a definitive answer. Whereas you see the people who really take this, you know, this on and they learn their craft and they master their craft. You could point at anything on their copy and say, why did you do this? And they'll give you a great big like analysis of it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that, you know, there's so many people that just write by the skin of their pants, and it's like, yeah.
I think that's an excellent point. Because I have noticed that too, where one of the things that I try to do in my YouTube videos and the master classes that I put together is actually show myself doing the work. Like, you know, warts and all, this is how I do this. And what I try to do is talk through my thought process as I'm writing and then revising and editing. And what I've found when I talk to newbies or mentees or anybody who shows me their writing, I do see a struggle to be deliberate in their writing.
Yep. That comes down to, and I know David Deutsch is a big like supporter of this, is copy thinking. And some people like there doesn't seem to be very much copy thinking before they write. There's a lot of thinking, and it's almost a desperation in their thinking. They're trying to explain themselves out of, you know, it's almost like if you got into a car and you know where you want to go, but you don't put the address or your destination into the GPS. You go, I'm just going to wing it. And you go down dead ends, you go the wrong way, and you end up, you know, maybe having to fill up with gas and, you know, get on your way again. But if only you had have just like put it in the GPS and you would have gone straight there, and you would have gone, a 5-minute trip instead of like a 50-minute trip. That's why I see when I write copy, I often think about where my copy is going, and then I basically charter a course to get to that. Like every then piece of copy that I write on the page between the headline and the offer and the close is like has to get me to there. But you see so many copywriters, they don't even know what the close is about. So they're kind of doing all this like copy justification on their way down. It confuses people. And you know why it confuses people? Because they're confused. Mark Ford says, you know, that clear copy is clear thinking, or clear thinking is clear copy. It works both ways.
That's a good place for us to segue into a different strand of conversation, because there's something that you touched on earlier that in my research of you, the cyber stalking, really.
Yeah, okay.
So do you want to talk about that night in Tasmania? I'm kidding. You went to go work for an agency, and the person who was hiring said something to the effect of, women copywriters are bad at it. There are no good women copywriters. And your response to that, well, I'll just let you tell the story, because I think that this is an important distinction, because one of the things that I'm proud of when it comes to copy that is that we have, more so than other hyper masculine copywriting shows, a larger female audience. Mm-hmm. And I think that's because we're not trying to put up a front. We actually do know that there is a disparity there. I'll just be honest. At the top level of copywriting, it's a little bit of a sausage fest. Mm-hmm. And I was wondering if you could speak to your experience there, and also, you know, share that story, that anecdote about like what you've had to sort of overcome in that regard.
Yeah, so that was quite a long time ago when I was kind of just starting out, and I did say that I wanted to be a copywriter. And this was in Australia, by the way, so back in the 1870s. Just joking. I felt like it. But I said, I wanted to be a copywriter, and the guy, and he just said, women don't make good copywriters, Pauline. I've not seen a good female copywriter in my time. He'd been in the industry for quite a while. And to be honest, I mean, this was like the early, 2010, thereabouts. And when I did look around, though, certainly in Australia, there weren't any female copywriters to really point a stick out. There's probably one, and she wasn't, very, very public in that. So then I just went, okay, well, you haven't met me. And he goes, well, I'd like to see that you prove me wrong, but I'm not sure that you will. Anyway, so then I started to look further afield, found people like Laurie Morgan, who I'm very good friends with. But it really wasn't until I went to the Titans of Direct Response in 2014. I walked in there, and although I didn't even know, though, there was a female boycott of that event because something that Brian Kurtz did, which was, whatever. But there was still enough females for me to walk in and just go, wow, there you all are. And then after that, I went to AWAI's boot camp the year after in 2015, and holy moly, were there lots of females there. And I mean, AWAI is run by females. Mm-hmm. So I was just like in my element. And then I started to see, but then like years later, established myself as a I guess popular, but also like, professional female copywriter. And now if I did see that guy again, and I think I will this year, I'll go up to him and I'll say, you were right. Females don't make good copywriters. We make excellent copywriters. But I mean, to his credit, he really did just put a fire in my belly. It's like a red flag to a bull to say.
I've definitely found that that's the case too, that the people who excel in this business are the people who get criticism or get told no, or, get sort of denied or get sort of put down. And rather than be dismayed and quit, they just get a chip on their shoulder and they work even harder. And then they, that helps them prove people wrong.
Yeah, well, Paris said no to me the first time I ever asked him to be a cub. That was at Titans of Direct Response in 2014. I had lunch with him, and I said, hey, Paris, what do I need to do to become a cub of yours? He goes, nothing. I went, well, that was really easy. Thanks. He goes, no, I'm not doing any more cub groups. And I went, yeah, but when you do, I want to be in that cub group. He goes, oh, you're going to be one of those ones, are you? And I went, you don't even know. Then I saw him a couple more times over the next few years, until one day, I just got the email, hey, Pauline, you still want to be a cub? Read this book, send me your takeaways, and let's go from there. But yeah, I mean, and he actually said to me at one stage, and this goes back to something we were talking about earlier, is the fact that, I invest myself. He said, Pauline, I see you more often than most of the people that live in America. Why is that? And it's because, well, that was part of me getting out of Australia, where they say, oh, females can't be good copywriters. It's like, well, why the heck would I want to hang around here and be like trodden down? That's when I decided that I was going to do most of my work in America. Why not?
I think that that's a really, really good lesson, not just for women, but also for men as well. That persistence, that drive, that unwillingness to, just accept no as a no. I mean, maybe men should take no as no.
Well, that's
different
circumstances.
Isn't it? Yes. Definitely contextual. In this case, in this world, what I found is that, flies in the ointment, squeaky wheels, they tend to rise up simply because they get noticed. Because the people like at the top of this business, they're not going to hunt you down.
No, exactly. Yeah, you have to stand out. Although I have stood out by not being in the ointment or, the squeaky wheel. You just consistently show up. Like, you just show that you're worth someone betting on you. And that was something. I did get a job from that guy that told me about the female copywriters, because I went up to him one day and said, I really want to write on your team. His was the only one in Australia you could write for. It was like the top one. I said, I want to write for you. And he goes, I don't even know that you can write. And I said, well, test me out. And if I blow it, I blow it. If I don't, but I didn't. I absolutely rose to the occasion, showed up and kept showing up consistently. And what he said to me years later, he goes, do you know why I gave you a go that day? I said, no. He goes, because of your character. You consistently show up. Your character is solid. So it's none of this like, trying these little tricks. You can hustle your ass off, but as long as you're doing it in the right way, you don't want to be annoying. You see the people that have, stink of that desperation at these networking events. And I even had that at a networking event years ago that I went to in Vegas. I'm standing in line politely. I'm from the Commonwealth, of course. We do lines really well, standing in line. And then these two young bucks just came and cut in the line in front of me. And I just looked at them. I looked at the guy that I was waiting to talk to. And I said, are you going to do something about this? And the guy goes, no. I went, all right, off you go. So I went out. I just got out of line and never worked with that client. That client's not around anymore. They were kind of like a big deal at the time, but now they're not. And I went, well, maybe it's the quality of the copywriters that you were working with, or just your attitude towards people who had the good character and great skills. But anyway, so that's a message to copywriters as well. Stand up for yourself. Know what you will and won't put up with in the industry.
I think that's a very, very good lesson. What is your favorite campaign that you've ever worked on?
There's been quite a few of them. There's some that I wrote over 10 years ago that are still being used by the clients, I was very much, the way that I cut my teeth in copy was with a very Dan Kennedy style shock and awe pack, online, offline, funnel, soup to nuts kind of thing, from the ugly ad to then, to, what was it? I was writing like the ugly ad, the phone script, the video scripts. I was writing everything. So there's a couple of those that are my absolute favorites, because there's one company that actually was very much unknown. The shock and awe pack was designed to basically sell franchises of their company, and now they're a multinational company, from Australia. They've grown so much, and yeah, I love the fact that my copy helped them to do that. So yeah, there's that, and then I've done some other kind of more, I don't know, boutique kind of campaigns that were only for such a small amount of people, but you still have to put the wholeness of all of your skills into it, whether you're writing I don't know, a select investor pack for a hedge fund that I did for Australia, trying to get multimillionaires and billionaires to, invest in this new startup kind of idea. I really like that too, because those kind of investors, they're not going to basically stomach the regular kind of direct response copy. You have to really treat them with utmost respect. You can't do your little tricks and hacks and that. They're on it. And if you do try to do that, then they think that you're a hack and they're not going to invest in you. So it's those kind of things. I think there's just I love the difference in the copy that I've ever had to write. Now I'm doing health copy. Now I'm actually doing a lot of copy chiefing as well. So I just love all of it. It's hard. What's your favorite child? I don't know.
I can definitely answer that.
Good on you.
It's the boy. He's not pooping on the floor right now.
Yeah, but I just love all of it, to be honest. I'm at a stage for my career now that I just write for people that I want to write for, instead of that trying to get anyone who's going to be able to pay me money kind of thing.
Yeah, it is nice to be beyond that stage.
Yeah,
that's a good
and
one.
I think for the listeners, you do get beyond that stage, but also something that Chris Dad said to me once. I was on one of his podcasts. He said, ethics in copy, and it's oh, come on, Pauline, we've all written something that we shouldn't have written, and it's no, I haven't actually. And he goes, come on, and I went, no, I haven't, because I've got very firm ethics, and that is it has to be right for me, you, and the planet, and then it's done. But I won't write something or won't write for a client or a potential client that could hurt people, like, especially in health. I don't want, like, my mum buying that shit and then, like, I don't have a mum anymore. Like, how would you feel if you were responsible for that? And as I said earlier, you know, shit rolls downhill to the copywriter. I'm not going to be copywriter to take that fall.
Is it possible that you're the only copywriter without marketer's remorse who's been doing this for more than 5 years?
I don't know. I would actually hope that there's more of us out there, but it just shows the kind of industry that it is.
Yeah.
To be honest, though, the people. But maybe I've just been fortunate that the people that I've worked with have been pretty ethical. I don't know how I've done it, but I don't have remorse about anyone that I've written for.
A lot of people ask me, you know, do I need to sacrifice my morals or my ethics? Like, do I need to, like, scrape the bottom of the barrel in order to sell shit that I don't believe in? And my answer to them is always no. Like, you can have a good, solid career only working for people that you believe in, that you stand with, and for products that you believe in.
Yeah. I think one of the things that I was taught earlier in the game was that when you say yes to something, you say no to everything else. So if you are going to say yes to that bottom of the barrel person that's going to treat you like shit, pay you shit, and then they're selling shit, you're saying no to every other person who could actually be good. That's where you've got to really trust the process. Back yourself and know that, you know, you can attract good clients that are going to pay you well enough. Let's just say it's not always like, you know, lollipops and rainbows and all that sort of stuff, and you know, but as long as they pay you fairly for what you are, I think, you know, that's a good day. It's like use your skills for good.
I've always had the opinion that, you know, sales and the power of persuasion is, there is no morality. Mm-hmm. I don't think that you know, capitalism is a moral or immoral thing. It's amoral. There is no sense of morality there. It's only what people do with it. Yep,
I agree. Same with copy, same with money. None of it has a conscience. You do. Mm-hmm. You're the one who keeps check on it. That's why some copywriters can write for people and they don't care if they hurt other people, because that's their version of the world. You know, you've got to sit with where your version of the world is, and if you can sleep at night, or it's up to you.
Yeah, that's that phrase, you know, making sure that you do what you can sleep at night with. I've heard that from many copywriters before.
Yeah.
And I think that is a testament to how much grit and skis there is in this particular world. So it is nice to be talking to somebody who has not had to live there and then rise up in order to see the light.
Well, put it this way, there's a little mantra or a little philosophy that I live under, and that is C words. You know, the Americans hate, there's a particular C words that Aussies apparently say all the time.
Oh, yeah.
Well,
one of my business partners has said it on stream and will repeatedly say it on stream.
Okay, well, I'm Australian and I don't say it right. So, but there is one word C word that I think is worse than the 4-letter C word, and that is the word compromise. And the reason I don't like the word compromise is because as soon as you compromise, there is a winner and a loser. So if you compromise on your integrity, your ethics or whatever, if you're the one compromising, then you feel a sense of loss and resentment and that you've lost something. What I like to do is find if there's a win-win or win-win-win, however many wins you can get is the better. But I just haven't ever felt the need to compromise on anything. By the way, there's been times I didn't know whether I could pay my mortgage and stuff like that. I'm not saying that I haven't been through this. I have. There've been very lean times. You know, Vegemite on toast for every meal for 15. And if you've 15 weeks, if you've tried Vegemite, you know how desperate that is.
Yeah, I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy.
Exactly. So, but there have been very lean times. So I'm not saying that I'm above it. I'm just saying that, you know, I would do it all the same way again, because then I don't feel that I've compromised on anything throughout my career.
That's a very good lesson. You know, especially for people that are seeking to get into this and are unsure of like where they, you know, feeling like they do need to compromise some of their integrity.
Yeah, Yeah,
in
and
order to do this.
then people tell you that you have to compromise. You know, like clients is like, oh, you're too big for yourself or whatever. Or they'll try to challenge you or dare you to write for them. And it's like, no. You know, you can actually say no to these people.
I really do hope that everybody listening to this takes away from this particular conversation that notion.
Yeah.
That, you know, especially because desperation is not an attractive feature, but also like you don't need to be desperate for approval or for work from other people.
Yeah. I mean, I've even given clients back their money once I've taken like the deposit or their money, and then I find out they're not actually who they say they are, or their supplements don't have the right amount of whatever in it. I just go, okay, we can't work together. Here's your money back. You know, there's some kind of a kill fee thing, but I won't even take the kill fee. I just go, I don't want anything to do with your money. And that's been tough, handing back people their money, especially when you need it. But I'm not going to be like known as a kill fee copywriter or anything like that, you know, just, but also I don't want anything to do with them. So, and then I've also got the faith in myself and my abilities that the money will come, and it does.
I guess the next question that I have for you sort of stretches back to what we were talking about before. It's time to close the loop, which is, you know, we've talked about compliant copy and wanting to write compliant copy. And I think that what you just said was a good segue into this conversation about how does one write compliantly? What does one need to keep in mind? And why should somebody really be paying attention to this right now?
Yeah. Well, I think like it's funny because I find myself defending direct response marketing and copywriting more often than I'd really like to. And because people like say that it's got a bad name and no one wants to do it anymore, and they say that it's dying, and I think it is kind of dying in some ways, but not as a whole. Like it's almost like maybe their little finger needs to be amputated. I don't know. But what I find is like a lot of people, they mix up the used car salesman, the nightmare stories, you know, that really like pushing of the envelope that you see in copy so much, and in direct response, everything. And then they just like label it as the whole thing is direct response sucks. But when you look at Collier, when you look at Caples, when you look about, you know, the olds and bolds that really did it well, you know, and even Ogilvy, like Ogilvy's like big secret weapon in the agency world was direct response, right? That is a purity of direct response that I think, you know, I don't think they had the compliance problems back then, although, like, you know, everyone laughed when I sat down, you know, that was a fabricated story. They could do that back then. We can't do that now. But we've got stories. We've got stories that we can tell that are not bullshit and not made up and not fabricated. But the thing is, I think with the whole thing around the compliance, it's like, why wouldn't you want to go back to writing like Caples and Ogilvy and Collier and all of those guys that weren't pushing the envelope so hard? We don't need to do that. So compliance for me is just not making those great big bullshit claims that everyone's tired of hearing and trying to make up. You know, it's like one-upmanship. It's like, oh my God, we've just done this. Now where do we take it? It's like the spectrum of swearing, you know, like you say fuck, everyone goes, oh my God, that's so naughty. Then it's like everyone says it, and then someone says a C word, and then everyone says it. Like, where do you go after that? That's a scale of like what we've done in direct response. They've scaled up all their, you know, bullshit stories and bullshit claims, and I think now we've just gone back to the reset point of like, let's go back to compliance. And then I think the copywriters who can write compliantly are going to be the superstars, because so many clients out there don't want, you know, the John died stories and the, I don't know, horrible stories that I've read in my copy chiefing days. You know, it's like incredible.
Incredible, I think, is
incredible.
Yeah, not credible is a very good word for it. But in terms of, you know, writing compliantly, I think there's a big fear right now that, you know, especially among newbies, you know, especially among people that have not been in this world for very long, there is a desire to push the envelope because there is still that fight or flight desperation, that eagerness to seek approval, that eagerness to get paid for their work, that get that coveted $10,000 per month or whatever it is that the gurus are promising these days.
Yeah.
What would you say to that person? What would you say to that person who, maybe is not sold on really buckling down and learning how to write compliantly?
What I would say is that I think that most clients are going to need both. They're going to need the really hard-hitting copy, and they're going to need the compliant version of it. And I think if you're the copywriter who can provide them with both, so that they can, maybe they've got two different platforms or traffic streams. If they've got an email list, that's no compliance is worried there. Get that traffic to the non-compliant thing, but then have the compliant ones for the ad platforms. I think that's going to make you into a speckled freaking unicorn, because you can write both. But if you're going to write the hard-hitting copy anyway, why not just write a compliant version? Maybe charge a little bit more for that. I mean, that could be one of the best packages that you could actually do. So I'm not saying, and again, I hate that word, compromise. Be the taco girl. Why not do both?
Por qué no los dos?
Yeah.
I think that's funny though. You kind of gently suggest delivering a package to a client or delivering some copy to a client and be like, oh, and by the way, if you would like the legal version of this, pay me.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Well, then I think it's going to give the copywriter, more tools weapons in their arsenal.
Mm-hmm.
But also it's for the client that, if they do get pinged or get shut down or something, then they can be back in the market straight away with the compliant version.
Compliance is a sticky issue because, a lot of people falsely assume that there's this overall set of rules that dictate what you can say in all advertisements all of the time. And it really is not the case.
No. I'm actually copy chief for an ad agency at the moment, and compliance is a big thing. That's part of the reason I'm here, and also for my freelance clients. But there Facebook, there are thou shalt not say blah blah blah, but there's no anything from Facebook saying that. It's what we've shared with each other, amongst ourselves to say, hey, we just had this ad shut down. This is why we think it was. It's best guess at the best. It's so frustrating, but just being able to have that common sense to go, okay, so this is what I do for Facebook. It's an old woman that's every time you say something that's a little bit challenging, she'll clutch her pearls and they'll have a conniption. It's oh my God. I'm not even my God. It's oh my goodness, just I can't believe they said that. So, and instead
Jiminy Christmas.
That's the one. It's they instead of going for a 10 out of 10 or an 11 out of 10 intensity of your claims, you'd be lucky if you can get away with a 2.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where you just start to get your awareness and your common sense around these ad agents, the ad platforms, and you go, okay, so Facebook's this personality, YouTube's this personality, and you're right, you have to work so much of it out for yourself. But this is where freelancers, I think, are disadvantaged, but this is part of the reason I'm working in an ad agency as well, because there's a collective. We're going, okay, so this is what we need to do. There's a flurry of activity to keep things as compliant as we can, but also in the ads is to be still edgy. You've still got to keep that edginess. But that's where I think being in that middle ground to know how to do both. Write that edgy copy, write the compliant copy. I think that's a magical place that, I think if there's copywriters out there that can only just do the one, that edginess, that's a danger place for them to be.
Yeah, I've definitely found that, especially people who learn formulas and templates and blueprints and stuff like that, this sort of entry level, traps that newbies sort of fall into, they tend to only have one gear.
Yes.
Have you seen this in your experience? I'm guessing yes, because
Yeah,
you're just nodding
definitely,
vehemently.
yeah. Well, I've never used templates or all that kind of stuff. I mean, Paris did use formulas for like his bullets. We spent like over a year learning bullets from him, and he's got like, I don't know, I lost count after about 54 different bullet formulas. But they're not as prescriptive as like, copy and paste or just insert thing here. It's like his stuff is really based on that copy thinking that we're talking about before. But I know the templates and the formulas that you're talking about, it's like just insert avatar here, and then everything stays the same. And it's like, I don't even think that that's really copywriting. And I don't want to sound like I'm posh or I'm too big for everything. It's like, you have to know how to write. That's the copywriting part is writing. You need to know how to actually write, just not, freaking just insert a couple of words into a template.
What are you talking? I can just give the template to ChatGPT, and then
Oh,
copywriting is
I was waiting
easy.
for AI just entered the conversation exactly. It's
Beep
like,
boop.
yeah. I've got nothing against ChatGPT or any of the AIs. I actually use them as an accessory, as a tool, not as a replacement. What I'm seeing a lot of copywriters doing is they're getting the super prompts and the prompts for this, prompt for that. I just have like a conversation with Chat. I don't even use the prompts that everyone else is using. And here's something for your guys. I've only shared this with my mentees. Everyone out there is doing these great big prompts of like, you're like an A-list copywriter and you're a blah, blah, blah. When we write copy, copywriters are invisible. We write on the behalf of the client who has a relationship with the list. Why the hell am I writing in a prompt? You're an A-level copywriter, Gary Halbert, we'll pick on him. You're Gary Halbert, reincarnated and blah, blah, blah. Write this as Gary Halbert. Why don't we just say you're, Frank Arkenuncle from, mum and pop shop, and he has like the solution to someone else's problem, right from him to them. Why do we have to involve copywriting? Because then actually the output from AI then becomes very salesy. We don't want that. And Gary Halbert himself said, that our copy needs to be invisible. Why are we making us visible in the process of what we're doing with AI? It doesn't make sense.
That's an extremely good point. I've never heard anybody make that particular point before.
It's pretty unique, apparently. I've been called many words because I shared it with a couple of my mentees that are really big into AI, and they went, "Oh my God, you've just like melted my brain down. Like, no one has said this." And I went, "No, but because they're all on the bandwagon of like, trying to get like a newbie copywriter to write like an A-lister. But what does that even mean? Like,
all the A-listers were trying to write like normal fucking people.
I know. I don't even try to write like a copywriter because I want my writing to be invisible. I want to have just this genuine heart-to-heart conversation with someone. I don't want the copy hacks, tricks and bullshit that like everyone's trying to do. I just want to show these people that they have a problem, my client has a solution, and I'm the conduit that allows those messages to come to each other. That's it. I don't have to impress people. Okay, I'm going to give it away. This is one of the things I'm known for. I've got this very basic saying, and that is, when you write copy, you want to bless people, not impress them. And it sounds weird to say, but what you're doing is you're blessing them with the solution to the problem that they have. You are not trying to impress them with your prose or what a wonderful writer you are. If they actually are concentrating on the writing or the script or whatever, you are concentrating on the wrong thing.
I think that's an extremely good lesson. It reminds me of a passage from Scientific Advertising where Claude Hopkins says something along the lines of like, prospects and customers are skeptical of rhetoric because rhetoric draws attention to itself. People, don't want to read your words because it's fun to read your words. People are looking for solutions to their problems. People are looking for opportunities. People are looking to be enticed. They're not looking for, James Joyce over here. And if the moment copy starts to draw attention to itself is the moment where it's bad copy.
Which goes back to the AI. Why are we drawing attention to ourselves as copywriters in the prompts? We are the least important thing in that copy. We're just the channel for the copy to come through. That's it.
I think that's going to harm a few egos. If you could speak to a newbie, if you could speak to a junior and give them advice, not only for getting started in this business, but also growing in this business, what would be the message that you have for them? What would be the thing that you would want them to take away from this interview so that they can really grapple on, add that to their tool set, and then use it to grow and progress?
I think the biggest thing is to know why you're doing this. Know your why. Whys are very important. It'll also give you direction in your career. When I first started, I don't know why I decided this, but as soon as I heard that there was an A-lister, I went, I'm going to be an A-lister. Mm-hmm. And then, what I said earlier in the GPS, example, was that because you have a destination in mind, what happens is that the right steps appear in front of you. I know that if I hadn't decided to be an A-lister, I don't think my friend would have sent me the Titans of Direct Response sales letter for me to have a look at. And then I wouldn't have gone to that event. So then I probably would have been stuck in Australia and I would have just rotted away and I wouldn't be a copywriter, much less anything else these days. So I think you really need to have an idea of where you want this to take you, what level you want to get to. And I appreciate that not everyone wants to be an A-lister. It's a lot of freaking hard work. And anyway, I never declared that I was an A-lister. It was actually Brian Kurtz who called me an A-lister, and then other people followed suit. So even being an A-lister isn't something that you have control of, because unless you're one of those people who calls yourself an A-lister, then you're not really an A-lister, are you? So it's one of those finer details in the careers of.
I like to call myself a B+ lister, maybe an A- lister.
I used to call myself an A-. Exactly.
Yeah.
I've actually got talks where I said, how to get to the A- level and beyond. So yeah, but the funny thing was that I never really called myself that, although I was aiming for it. So what I would say to any newbie is just know why you're doing it. Know why it has to be about you, not about someone else. And don't write love letters to other copywriters. Do it for you. Don't try to impress other people. Just keep, being true to yourself and your goals. And study, for goodness sakes. Just study, I don't know, ChatGPT and just learning off other people. That's what I've seen, which makes me sad, that other people will do a book report and they'll teach it as a course. And you know damn well that it's from breakthrough advertising or, scientific advertising, tested advertising. And you can see where the source material has been. But here's my thing. One of the reasons why I broke out of Australia and went to America was, there's all these people will quote this thing that if you go to a conference or whatever, you only retain 10% of what you hear. Mm-hmm. So what was happening in Australia was we would have these people go over to America and they'd go to these conferences and they'd come back and they'd teach us what they'd learnt over there. But then I actually realised that I was only learning 10% of what they learned.
Which was only
and
10%.
And then I was only getting 10% of theirs. So really it was this beautiful photo, and then someone took a photocopy of that, took a photocopy of the photocopy, and then it's diminished all the way down. And I said to Ray, my partner, I said, I want to go and learn from the people that these guys are learning from, because at least then I'll have 20%. I'll have my 10% and their 10%. And that's why I said, I went to the mountain. I was trained by Ted Nicholas, because we got off our butts and came over here. Dan Kennedy, Clayton Makepeace. You know, there was one year we hit all three of those guys. We called it like the year of the big mountains, you know, like the three peak year. And and now like two of them are no longer with us. So, you know, that's why I say back yourself and go after it. And if you want to be trained by someone, then just do what you need to do to be trained by them, because unfortunately some of them are getting quite older. And anyway, doesn't matter if they're old or not. Who would have predicted that, you know, we'd lose Clayton Makepeace? That one still hurts me to this day. He was such a lovely guy. So yeah, just don't make excuses. Just get on and be the best you can be.
What would you advise people not to do earlier in their careers? What are some of the biggest mistakes that you've seen folks make?
I think one of the biggest things that I see, and this is probably going to hurt people, is don't be lazy. If you're lazy, the only person you're really affecting is yourself and your bank account in the future. I remember I did a course with Mike Morgan. He's kind of hard to track down. He's kind of elusive, but an amazing copywriter. Anyway, so I got to do a course with him, and first thing he said was, I want you to write out the Wall Street Journal letter 9 times.
Oh, the two people.
Yeah. And I went, yeah, okay. I've already done that a number of times. Every mentor I sign up with always gets me to do that. I've already written it out about 9 times. He goes, well, then you don't have to do it, Pauline. But if you don't, the only person you're ripping off is yourself. You know, if you are lazy, then you'll get lazy results. And I was going to do it anyway because, like, you know, he told me to do it. But it was really, that was such a big lesson in not being lazy. Mm-hmm. And then working with Paris and being trained with him for like 6.5 years, you know, really got the laziness out of me because, and, you know, I don't know, just training at that elite level for that amount of time just helps you to just have a different perspective on things, and that's why you will go further than everyone else. And you know, there's so many people like Marty Edelston, who started Boardroom. He said that he wanted to outwork everyone. Mm-hmm. So, and he did, and look what he did with Boardroom. So yeah, I would say the biggest lesson is don't be lazy, because the only person that you affect and hurt is yourself.
Well, I think that's a good transition point into kind of where I wanted to steer this conversation towards the end, mm-hmm. which is something that you actually touched on a little bit earlier, which is about finding a why. And you, in a previous interview, described it as finding an unshakable why.
Yep.
And I was wondering if you wouldn't mind talking about how you not only came up with that concept, but also, you know, how you found your own unshakable why. What is the thing that allows you to keep going? Because, you know, I do know that there have been some trials and tribulations and struggles in your past. Mm-hmm. And I know that a lot of people watching have had a very similar, possibly traumatic experience. And they might need to hear a message about finding something that can allow them to keep going.
Yeah. Well, to talk about my unshakable why, I need to go back to a kind of a fairly dark place, if I may. So just let people know that there's a bit of a trigger warning on this. So I said at the beginning of the interview that I was discharged from the army. It wasn't my choice. I was actually discharged with major depression because they absolutely burnt me out. And then they mistreated me and overdosed me on antidepressants. So I basically left the army not medicated, and basically they said that I'd never nurse again. It basically took everything, every little skerrick of hope of anything away from me. So the day that I was being discharged, and my partner didn't know this until several years later, which was a huge embarrassment on my behalf. But when I was driving home that day, I'd picked out a tree and I was going to drive into it. And I knew how fast I had to do it to make it a good job. So there I was, speeding towards the tree. And then all of a sudden, like, this voice yelled out, I don't even know where it came from, just stop the f***ing car. It's like, you know, like just snapped me out of my death trance. And I stopped the car with just like millimeters to spare. So I'm sitting there just like looking at this trunk of a tree. It was quite a big one. Just going, what the hell is going on here? And so then, so that was that. And so then I basically had to get my shit together, and, if I was going to stay on the planet, I had to find out why and do something with it. So I made a promise to myself that if I wasn't going to be able to kill myself, and by the way, the reason I actually, and I knew that it was the wrong thing for me to do, because I was an emergency nurse and I'd nursed a lot of people who'd fucked up their death.
Mm-hmm.
And what I said to whoever the mad woman was that yelled out, "Stop the fucking car," was that good call, because basically I know that I would have fucked it up. If I can't be alive and nail that, then why am I going to nail my death? So, and being reminded of that every day of my life. And really, the army didn't care. Not many people cared about me at that stage, so why do that? So I drove home and then, just curled up into a ball of tissues and snot and into the fetal position. So I went on a journey, and probably about maybe about 7 years ago now, I was just sitting there, I was hanging around a lot of entrepreneurs, and they're all like, "Oh yeah, I've got my why," Simon Sinek, and "Oh yes, I've got my why." It was very fashionable. And I had some friends that wanted to have orphanages in India and go to Thailand and get the women off the streets and that, and stop human trafficking and all that. Really big whys, and I'm just going, man, I don't have anything like that. What the hell? But then I contact, those people at the next event you see them at, and you go, "How's your orphanage going?" "Oh, I haven't started because something's happened." "And how are the sex workers in Thailand?" "Still there. Haven't got my shit together." And I'm just going, but these whys are supposed to be these moving things that they've got, or a purpose in their life. Why aren't they doing it? Anyway, I do this thing that I call contemplation, which is you sit there in deep quantum thought, and I kind of have a talk to the boss or God, creator, whoever you call it. I go, "God, what's with this? Shit, no one's achieving their why." And I got, because they're external. I went, "Oh, external? Why is external bad?" It's because, well, then anyone can do it. And so there's so many people who want to do the schools in Africa and do all that sort of stuff. And then if someone else is doing it, they go, "Oh, well, they've already done it, so I don't need to do it." And so I went, okay, well, what's a better why? And then I got an internal why. Internal? And then I went, what does that even look like? So then I just saw a vision of myself 20 years into the future, this old savvy, edgy woman. And I went, "Oh, who's that?" It's you. "Oh, okay." So I looked at her and I went, "Oh." And then whatever decisions I made now influenced her quality of life. And this is all sounds very woo-woo, by the way, but I'm just going with it.
No, I love it.
I'm just going with it.
Yeah.
I own it these days. I'm not even embarrassed by it. So anyway, it's I just went, "Oh, that's cool." So then I started to look at it, and then I said, "Why is this why different than the external why?" And I got, "Because it's unshakable." Ah, unshakable. That's the unshakable bit.
Because it comes from inside.
It comes from inside. It's unshakable in that I have to do things to make her life better, every decision. So what happened though, it had a ripple effect. And this is when you are self-centered, which people would say is bad. But the thing is when I've spoken to other people about their unshakable why, they go, "Oh, it's my children, or it's my wife, it's my husband," and that. And I say, but the thing is that without you, they have very different lives. So you need to be your unshakable why. And it doesn't have to be 20 years in the future. It can be one moment, 1 second, 1 year, whatever. Choose the time. But why it's 20 years for me is I'm never going to meet that woman. But I have and she's 3 years older than my mum, which is very funny. She outranks my mum. But but I have such an empathy and a love for this woman, this part of me in the future, that I go, you have spent your whole life putting up with me. You really need to catch a break. So I want you to be, in the future at your whatever birthday, just celebrating, drinking and having all your friends on your private island or whatever it is. Whatever you want, you can have. I'm going to be your little genie. Your wish is my command. And so what I do now, though, Sean, is that every opportunity that comes my way, I look at it through the lens of, does this make her life better or does it make it worse, or is it just meh? If it's meh or makes it worse, it's then why do it? Mm-hmm. But if it's going to make her life better, I'm going to go in there with boots and all, and I'm going to do it as much as I can. So that really gets me to the point of I don't suffer from the shiny object syndrome. When I get invited to events, I go, okay, so, hey, Pauline, the old geezer, is this good for you or bad for you? And I get the good or bad. It's like an internal litmus test. And then I just go, okay, this is pretty freaking unreal. So it sounds really weird, but that's my unshakable why. Now I want to go back to something that I said before, and I always get God bumps every time I talk about it. I firmly believe that the stupid, crazy woman that screamed to me in the car that day was my unshakable why woman from the future. And all I have to do is say thank you to that woman for saving my life that day, because I was so determined to check out of life and just not be here anymore.
I'm extremely glad that you're around, and I'm extremely glad that you and your partner get to join my family for dinner tonight, and that you have arrived in Baltimore. Is there anything, before we depart from this lovely discussion, that you would like to say to the people that are watching right now?
Just be true to yourself. I mean, you're doing this for you. Know why you're doing it. You don't have to get swallowed up by other people's purposes and intentions and missions and all that sort of stuff. And it really is hard at times. I have cried and sobbed those tears from my soul, just going, when the hell is this going to work? Mm-hmm. And it's actually in those moments of the darkness or whatever that then the light comes brightest. And it's just stay the course. What I've noticed about a lot of people is that they will, shiny object syndrome, they'll go to the shiniest thing now, the NFTs, the cryptos, the this shipping, and the that, the this. And they're going to do that forever, and they're not going to make the progress. Whereas something that I know that I've done that's given me the longevity and the success that I've had is I've just stuck with it. It's not glamorous, and it can be quite boring at times, but just stay the course and just know that you will hit your target.
Pauline, thank you so much for joining me tonight. And everybody, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for listening to us. Take care. I hope you take many lessons from this particular conversation and use it to not only improve your lives, but also to improve your copy and your outlook on life, because there's a lot here that I think could be beneficial to you. And I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful life wherever you are, if you're listening to this, which you probably aren't. Take care.